Hi, everyone, and welcome to Your Stake, Your Story. We're a video series focused on highlighting best practices of financial advisors and values-based investing. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by Nycole Freer. Nycole's the founder of Eden Financial, a financial planning firm in Aliso Viejo, California. She works with her clients as their financial partner, educating them so they can become more confident along their wealth building journey. Nycole, really excited to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get this going. And as is custom on this Your Stake Your Story podcast, starting with your story, would love to hear what led you to founding Eden.
Yeah, so my last 7 years in the industry, I was working at JP Morgan and I loved it. Like when I got that job, I felt like I landed my dream job. I couldn't have asked for anything better. But then COVID hit and we got a taste of working from home. We had a little bit of freedom and I had a baby and I got married. So all of a sudden
Congratulations.
thank you. All of a sudden like my priorities changed. So I wanted to write a book, I wanted to blog, I wanted to do social media, and working at big brokerage firms, you're not allowed to do that because it competes with, their business. So I started thinking like, hey, I want to kind of go off on my own. I asked a partner. My guy wasn't really interested in partnering, and the other option was working at the Chase branch, and I would have been in Orange County. They already pretty much have all the advisors filled in each branch, and so I would have been the second or third. And my advisor just kind of was like, hey, I don't think that's a good idea. It's very competitive. So it's like, how do I start my own RIA? I hired a coach, Suzanne Murmurs, out of Arizona, and we worked from July all the way till January before I left JP Morgan just to ramp up. Okay, what do I need to do? I went with XY Planning Network. She told me to go there and they've helped me get launched. And then the name Eden Financial comes from like the Garden of Eden. And that's really kind of what stuck with me. And I couldn't think of any other name. So here we are with Eden Financial
Mhm.
and, doing all the things that I wanted to do, published a book and, have blog posts now and commenting on the media and, all these things. So I'm just so excited and so happy that like I took that leap. And although it was so scary, here we are today.
Wow. What was the main fear and what helped you overcome that?
The main fear was money. So I was scared to lose my six-figure job.
Mhm.
And, we bought a house and we paid daycare and, to take that step back. But I really believed in myself and I had the confidence that I could do this
Mhm.
and I only need X amount of assets under management to make it. And honestly, I feel like the regret would have been more than if I didn't take that leap.
Mhm.
And like even all the fear factor, like say this just totally doesn't work out. No one ever gives me any money, though I don't ever think that will happen. It's like, okay, we sell our house and like we start from scratch, but I don't think that will ever happen. So anyways, I kind of overcame my fear of not having my six-figure job anymore because I'm going to be making hopefully like 500,000 in 3 to 5 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
let's do it. I love
thank
that.
you.
And when did you launch?
January 17th.
All right. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank
and
you.
the book, when did that come out?
That came out April 4th. So just a few weeks ago.
Do you want to share with the audience what the book is and what inspired you to write it?
Yeah. So the book is called Hazley's Birthday Money. And I was doing a Bible study called Dream Big by Bob Goff. And one of the questions at the end of the book was, what do you want to come back and tell your small group that you did? Well, at that time, this was in 2021. I was like, I'm too scared to become an advisor. So I had this idea that I'll write a children's book instead. And so kind of the concept of is like when you get this money that you're given for your birthday, like what do you do with it? Like my story is I got money for my birthday and I spent all of it. I had, I didn't know what to do with it. My grandma's like, hey, if you save until you're 16 years old, I'll match it. Well, one,
Hmm.
I didn't know how to budget, so I just spent it all, and, like, I didn't know what my goals were. No one talked to me about that, so it was all gone, and, like, I just feel like if we could start teaching children younger or teaching kids at a younger age about money, that maybe when they graduate high school, they could have, like, a lump sum of money, and they can
Wow.
have more options than, coming out of school with, like, nothing.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's really amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, so it was really fun to do, and the illustrator's out of Canada, and she did a great job. I didn't really wanna go cheap on the illustrations because half the book is illustrations, so
Mhm.
it was a very exciting project.
That's amazing. And would you say that I think when you talked about the reasons why you wanted to leave the big brokerage of JP Morgan, it was to be able to have more freedom, to be able to create the book and the blog. How much
Mhm.
of your mindset is thinking about this as like a business move versus just something that you want to do and something that's good on its own?
So I originally started with the book,
Hmm.
so I feel like it was just kind of like a fun idea. Hey, maybe I'll make some money off of it.
Hmm.
And then, like, in that process, I became more confident in myself and was ready to take that entrepreneurial journey to step out and become a financial advisor. It's like, okay, I could do this.
That's really cool. And before I dive into some questions about your practice and what you do, where
Yeah.
can people find the book?
Yeah, so you can find it on Amazon. You could search Paisley's Birthday Money, so it's like Paisley with an H. And you could even Google it. I mean, it comes up. So, I mean, you could get it from Walmart online or even on Barnes& and Noble online as well.
That's amazing. Very cool.
Thank
So
you.
you started Eden Financial.
Yes.
Uh, were you, when you were at JP Morgan, incorporating values and potentially faith-based investing into your work, or is that something that is relatively newer?
Yeah, actually relatively newer.
Hmm.
So now that I'm able to run like my own practice, I can, you know, essentially help my clients to like let them know what options are out there and like
Hmm.
this is an option and put that into place. So, yeah, this is a relatively new and with XY Planning Network, they have your stake with them. And so I looked up you guys and like
Hmm.
what a cool concept. So like if any listeners out there that like aren't advisors or even are advisors, you guys can take a look at the questionnaire that I have. It's a freebie actually on my Instagram if you guys want to take a questionnaire to see what your values are.
That's awesome. Love that.
Yeah.
And is that something that when you're interacting with clients, do you send them a questionnaire to start getting in that values conversation, or does that kind of come up naturally in your discussions when you're either doing an onboarding or how do you bring up values and as
Yeah.
part of your conversations with clients?
Yeah, so values is a big deal. So I'm a behavioral financial advisor, and pretty much that whole course was about values.
Hmm.
And when I meet with a client, I'm like, we go through the values exercise together.
Hmm.
So it's literally like a questionnaire there in and of itself. And it's like 50 top values, and we get them all the way down to their top five values.
Hmm.
So whether it's faith or family, whatever it is, I start there. And then once I kind of get an idea of their values and their goals, then we move into the investment side.
Hmm.
And so with that investment side, I'll say, hey, here's a questionnaire. Can you fill it out? Kind of want to see where your values are in regards to investing. And then we move forward from there.
Yeah. I think I know exactly which exercise you're talking about. I think I took that 2 months ago,
Oh, nice.
where it has these cards you have to keep narrowing down
Yes.
progressively and figure out which values you want to focus on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So think to perform is the one that I use, but
Yeah.
maybe there's other ones out there. Did you use
Yeah,
that
that
same
was the
one?
one. That was the
Oh,
one.
nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
What were your five if you remember off the top of your head?
Yeah, so family, faith, education, recognition, and I think security was the other one.
Hmm. And then
Yeah.
as
How
part
about
of
you?
I wish you didn't ask me that because I took it and I thought, oh, what, this is pretty accurate. I mean, it was good. It was helpful for me. I mean, of course, it's accurate. I chose it, but it was
Yeah.
like a good thought exercise to
Mhm.
narrow things down progressively. And it was challenging but fun to be able to figure out what the five were. And I enjoyed going through the exercise, but I could
That's
probably
okay.
give you generally, let's go with love, let's go with loyalty, let's go with a couple other of those.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, service actually was my biggest one.
Oh,
Uh,
good.
so yeah, it was really cool to go through, and I could imagine going through that with a financial advisor would be really fun. Uh, my question though, um, do you feel like you got the training through that behavioral program to take the results of that and now know what to do with it?
Yeah, I did. And you just kind of bring up the conversation, like how our behavior affects our
Mhm.
investment and how that affects our rate of return, really.
Yeah.
So investments work, investors don't. And it all comes down to our
Mm.
behavior.
Hmm.
The stock market's coming down and they're like, let's get out. And then 3 days later, the market's up. I want to get back in. It's like,
Hmm.
so we kind of talk about, we look at investments and then we come back down to like values. Just like, hey, is this really part of your values? Why are you
Mm.
selling right now? Like,
Mm.
there's no reason for that. And we can get into this, like your emotional side of your brain is getting triggered when you like fear sets in when you're seeing like losing money.
Yeah.
So your rational side of your brain doesn't get triggered until a few seconds after your emotional side, or even like
Interesting.
really small seconds.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've seen that actually a lot within our field, like ESG, values, impact, faith-based investing,
Mm.
where when clients panic and say that they want to sell, the advisor says, "Hey, we had a plan. You're aligned with your values. You're doing the right thing. You're following the plan, and you're on the right track still." And that's something that is a huge component of maintaining that relationship and that emotional safety. Do you have any
Mhm.
examples or stories that you can tell of using that behavioral side with a client in a particular situation?
Yeah. So more so at JP Morgan
Sure.
when we were, you know, dealing with 2020, for example, like that's right now.
Hmm.
My boss was out of the office. He was in Japan. And here I am like fielding these calls and like, hey, economically we're totally fine. Like, just stay the course and like, and I don't know if all the listeners know, but like within a few weeks we were already like back up and like it was hard to get back in,
Hmm.
really. So I got this training actually in December. So back in 2020, I didn't have this knowledge to say, hey, your emotional side of your brain is getting triggered before your rational side.
Yeah.
But I really think it's more of like a proactive approach. So now all my clients that I meet with, I do a whole 30-minute investment presentation with them on like the market. So if you're in the market for 1 year, here's what you can expect 5 year, 10 year to 20 years. And over 20 years, you know that there's really not a loss at all. So we have to stay the course. And so also bringing in like, hey, your emotional side, like we just talk about it beforehand. Like, hey, if the market's coming down, your emotional side may get triggered before your rational side of your brain. Don't call me when the market's, coming down because you're being emotional about it. So it's a more proactive approach versus like in the heat of the moment. I
Hmm.
want my clients to be aware of that. And then also within that training, we talk about like decision making
Hmm.
and like within 4 quadrants, you're excited, like elated. You don't want to be making decisions when you're like not just kind of totally like kind of content.
Interesting.
So, and like if you're fearful or you're depressed, like that, those aren't the times to be making decisions.
Mhm.
So I kind of talk about the 4 quadrants and how within the 4 quadrants, you only want to be making decisions in one of those quadrants.
Mhm. Because I guess any emotional high or low is going to
Mhm.
impact your decision making. You want to be stay the
Yep,
course.
exactly.
Interesting.
Hmm.
That's really so really curious how you if you and how you apply this to your own life.
Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of just check in on my emotions like, hey, how am
Mhm.
I feeling? They call it the freeze game. So I kind of put a timer on my phone every like hour. I'll get like a freeze notification. I'm like, okay, how am I feeling? Like, how are my shoulders?
Hmm.
How am I feeling in my body? And kind of being more aware emotionally of what's going on with me. And then on my refrigerator, I also have like different emotions. So a lot of us, it's hard for us to pick like, okay, how am I feeling right now? And so we have a list of emotions on our refrigerator. So like if my husband does something that like I'm not super happy about, I go to the fridge and like look at my emotions and say, this is how I'm feeling.
Hmm.
And, so that's kind of also something that I've been working on while
Hmm.
learning all these behavioral financial advice techniques.
I totally love that. But my next question, what are your biggest challenges that you're facing in starting a values-oriented and behavioral-focused firm, and how are you overcoming them?
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge is it legitimate? Like,
Mm,
are we going to make more money by not being in value-based investing? And by so if that's where like values come into play. So if if you don't want to be investing in tobacco, for example, like then we're not going to put you in there. And, and there's other types of values and things that we want to restrict because it's important to that person. I feel like maybe with even investing that they'll stay in for the long haul because they know what they're investing for the future for.
hmm.
So, yeah, that's the conversation I have with my clients. So, maybe ESG is going to just totally outperform and everyone's going to wish that they were in ESG,
Hmm.
moving forward. And which probably is going to be the case because it's kind of where we're heading and just kind of where a lot of people are talking about it. Just went
Yeah.
to the CFA Orange County Forum, and it was one of the topics that we talked about was ESG.
Yeah,
So,
it's really interesting in 2021. I mean, back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, ESG had a history or this perception of underperformance. And
mm,
a lot of that is because it was really based around one approach of particular negative exclusions. But then in the 2010s, there was study after study after study after study coming out showing that ESG actually helps with outperformance, better risk adjusted return. Sometimes it's a risk management play. And then in 2021, there was so much excitement because ESG was totally outperforming during the pandemic. And then people got a little bit scared when oil had a good year last year.
oh
But
yeah,
I mean, the long-term numbers are still showing,
yeah,
yes, there are going to be some good ESG managers and some bad ESG managers, just like there are good small cap managers and bad small cap
totally,
managers. But there's a lot more showing that these are factors that influence financial performance, and
yeah,
good investment managers should be looking at those factors
yeah.
uh, and considering them. So is that, are you talking about that with clients and trying to make the case, or are you saying, hey, like kind of going to their fear around potentially losing money and what values are most important? It's probably a
Hmm.
combination of both. That's my guess.
Yeah, combination of both. I mean, after this CFA event that I just went to, literally he showed like 6 different categories and we all had to pick which one actually had ESG in it. And literally like we couldn't pick it because like the top 10 holdings were all so very similar.
Yeah.
So, uh, yeah, so I think you could be in ESG and still be in like all the categories that you want to be in.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think certain clients I think it's good for, and for others, they're like, they really don't care. So my younger clients, obviously, they care more.
Hmm.
So I have some younger clients. One of them's in college, and so she's invested in ESG.
Hmm.
So it just depends on the clientele, really. And I will share with them like, hey, we couldn't tell which one was ESG and which one wasn't. So if you want to be in it, let's do it, especially if it's on your heart.
Interesting. And that, so you're saying that that's like a great point to make to be able to reduce the fear and anxiety around ESG is this foreign thing that I don't really know what's
Hmm.
going on. Well, hey, it has a lot of the similar holdings.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Just educating people, obviously. It always helps education so that we're not naive to what's really
Mhm.
possible.
So my last question, in 3 to 5 years, as you said, you're going to be killing it with Eden Financial.
Yeah.
And what do you think the field will look like in 3 to 5 years? Where do you see values-based investing
Mm.
headed?
I think it's going to be a big part of all of our practices. Yeah, I think because we're talking about it so much, we've been talking about it, we're getting more education around the concept of it. I think it's going to play a big part of our practice, my practice. So yeah, looking forward to the future.
That's amazing. Nycole, thank you so much for your time and really
Thank
excited
you.
to see where things go and hope to have you on again.
Thank you so much.